Welcome to Home Education Matters, the weekly podcast supporting you on your home education journey. Hello and welcome to Home Education Matters. Today I'm joined by Holly Billinghurst from TeachAllAboutIT, and we are going to be talking about computer science and IT provision, because it's a slightly tricky one, because obviously by nature of the subject it's very practical. So Holly, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we can launch into how you help home educators with this, a subject that is actually normally very of interest to home educated children.
Hello. So I am both a teacher and a home educator. I was a classroom traditional teacher for 10 years before moving into tuition about 5-6 years ago. I founded TeachAllAboutIT mainly because I wanted to make sure that education was accessible. I found that a lot of students were dropping out from my subject because they weren't able to actually access education, whether that was through school, whether it was home ed, but they weren't able to get hold of the subject. So I've been campaigning for students with disabilities, with SEN, and sort of students in general as well, to be able to sit a variety of computer science subjects.
So it's computer science and sort of techie subjects that you specialise in?
It is. So I specialise in computing, which actually have 3 different strands. You've got computer science, which is the maths, techie, programming side. You have IT, which is the use of computers. And then you've got digital literacy, which is the sort of the standard use of computers, but also things like e-safety.
Is the digital literacy, sorry, I struggled with that one this morning. Is the digital literacy, is that like the European no, it's not called that anymore. The International Computer Driving License, is that the same kind of thing?
ICDL is ICT. That would be your use of computers. So digital literacy is more like keeping people safe online. So e-safety covers things like what would happen if you were being trolled online? How do you deal with it? Cyberbullying, seeing inappropriate things online, age appropriateness. I've just done a whole session with my Key Stage 3 students on things like gaming with PEGI ratings, understanding why actually it's illegal for a parent to buy a particular age-rated game.
Well, this sounds like a course that all children should take, and perhaps that all parents should take as well, right?
Yeah, there's some fantastic resources out there. I am CEOP trained. CEOP is the online protection child agency, essentially. And they run some fantastic online resources. There's age-appropriate resources on there, but there's some fantastic stuff in there for parents.
So this digital literacy course, that's not a GCSE, I'm guessing, though. That's like a qualification that they could maybe put on their CV or something like that.
Absolutely. It's more like a skills course. So rather than having anything which is a GCSE or an A level, digital literacy is an embedded skill, a little bit like sort of literacy is to English.
And are all your courses online? Because it must be quite difficult to do computer science and things like that online, because obviously you got your student on a laptop somewhere else in the world.
So 90% of my tuition is online. Online tuition is actually the best possible scenario for computing, especially computer science, because we have tools which allow me to see them coding in real time. We have these fantastic practical sessions where I'm able to put 2 students into a virtual coding room together, where they never have to see each other, but they can see each other code, and they can actually work together. We call one the driver and the other one the navigator, and then they swap around. So you're able to work with other people like throughout the world.
That sounds really nice. So it's collaborative, but maybe it's nice for children who are maybe a bit shy or get a bit anxious, so they don't actually have to sort of have their cameras on and eyeball each other, but they can just see each other coding and help each other out coding.
Absolutely. And we have like a little chat facility that I'm monitoring as well.
Do you access their laptop? Do you kind of take take over controls of their laptop?
No, it's all browser based. So I host the system, or we use an online system. So they log into it. I can see everything that they're doing for safety and also to help them. But no, I can't touch their laptops. I don't get to control anything, and I don't give them control of mine either.
I bet. Can you imagine the mischief that a 14-year-old would do on your laptop within about 5 minutes? Log you out of everything for a start. So let's start from the beginning. So if a child was interested in some sort of computer-based qualification and they're maybe 12, would you recommend a Key Stage 3 course, or would you recommend some sort of starter course, or would you just say, look, just launch into the GCSE at that point?
It's going to really depend on the individual learner, because you know home education is going to be unique to that particular student. It's even like two different kids in the same family are going to be utterly different. So if you happen to have a 12-year-old who's really, really interested and really wants to engage with somebody else, or just needs that little bit of help or assistance, then courses are fantastic. And Key Stage 3 courses can run from anything with like a live lesson every week to something which is pre-recorded. Alternatively, if you've got a really independent learner who doesn't want to follow that kind of structure, you could then just access some assistance online. I'd always recommend trying to follow some of the Key Stage 3, because it gives you a really good foundation into GCSE. It does make it easier.
It makes it easier, but is it sort of necessary? Are there things that are covered in Key Stage 3 that aren't covered in the GCSE again?
It's not vital. It's not vital. And if you don't do Key Stage 3 and you want to just go straight into GCSE, as long as you've got the time and you're willing to do a little bit of research, because there is some assumed knowledge. The GCSEs, by the exam boards, they've been written with this idea that everybody's in school. So when I was writing for Cambridge, I used to have lots of conversations with them. What about the home educated students? What about students who have never come across this? And there is going to be a natural assumption at GCSE that they've done 2 or 3 years of study before this.
I'm guessing when you were writing for the exam boards and you posed that question, they basically said, who cares? Shrug shoulders,
No,
who cares? No, did they care?
No, they absolutely do. They absolutely do. They are really starting to take on the concept of home education being quite a growing market. And they're now looking at their resources, not constantly referencing schools, which is fantastic.
That would be good, because when my son did German, all of the speaking and listening was all, what's your school day like? What sports do you play at school? And it is very exclusionary, although I understand, obviously home educators have made a decision to remove ourselves from the mainstream. And so everything is catered for the mainstream. So I try not to get too annoyed about it.
I think the IGCSE is becoming far more inclusive.
Yeah, because I'm guessing obviously that's a lot of international schools, so they have to assume that there's people with all sorts of different experiences coming into it. Is it normally the IGCSE that people sit for computer science?
They're generally at the moment for GCSE level. IGCSE is probably still the easiest one to access. OCR as a GCSE is absolutely something that you can, if you have the exam centre to do so, and if you have the ability to spend a little bit of time with the provider just showing that you've done some programming. It's no longer that you have to do this like big project for GCSE, but you do have to have somebody to sign off to say, yes, you haven't just studied pseudocode.
So the GCSEs, they have like a coursework element, and the IGCSEs, they just have a practical exam, do they?
There's no coursework for OCR GCSE now. It is 100% exam, but you do have to have a sign-off to say that you have done some practical programming. Alternatively, I also teach a GCSE equivalent games design course, which is 40% coursework. So you do have to do that through a provider. That's one of the OCR nationals. And the iMedia is fantastic for kids who don't necessarily want to do computer science, but they're a little bit more arty. They want to do more things. They still want to code, but maybe they want to code for a game. Or in our case, they definitely want to code for a game because that's an entire unit.
What's a GCSE equivalent then? Is that like an LSFE or LCFE or one of these things?
So BTEC is the brand name for Pearson. So OCR's BTEC equivalent is the OCR Nationals. So they used to be Camtex, but then they got told off because that was a bit too close to the brand. So you'll have OCR Nationals, which are essentially BTECs but run through a different exam board. Then you've got BTECs, which are run through Pearson.
Okay, and so BTEC generally equates across to one GCSE, does it?
Yes, yeah. So if you have a BTEC level 2, that is a GCSE equivalent of usually a 5 and above if you get the level 2.
And I'm guessing most colleges, most post-16 colleges would recognise a BTEC or whatever that OCR National. Yeah, it's more widely recognised than some of the level 2 courses, I'm guessing.
It is, yeah, and that they're all part of. If you were at school, it would be part of your Progress 8. So they would be recognised as part of like the school standards.
That one you mentioned, the OCR one, that still has an exam at the end of it, yeah.
It does. All vocational courses now have to have 40% coursework as the maximum, then 60% at the end of the exam. All vocational courses need to have the coursework element there, but they have to have an exam as well. So there are a really, really small number which are on the old system of BTECs, which are still 100% coursework, but they will be phased out within the next sort of 18 months. They are very much against having 100% coursework, which is a shame because some courses should be. But
why is that? Is that because they think it's too easy or something, or is that like a government thing?
That was let's say that was a political decision.
One of those. We won't go into those because you and I could be here for a quite long time discussing that. So let's take a fictional character, and he's going to be called. Actually, it's going to be a girl. She's going to be called Deborah. I think Deborah's a nice name. Not enough Deborahs around anymore. Okay, so Deborah, she's 13. She loves computers and she's done some coding, maybe Scratch, that kind of thing. She's got a Java book. She finds it a bit hard. I'm getting into Deborah now. This is working. And she doesn't want to do Key Stage 3. She's home educated and she wants to just go straight in. And she wants to do a GCSE over a couple of years, sit it when she's about 15. So what options are there available to her for GCSE, for like that kind of techie kind of thing?
Okay, so if Deborah was about to go into GCSE, so the IGCSE is probably going to be the route that is easiest to find an exam centre for. And from that point, there's a number of different options. You can self-study for IGCSE, no problem at all. If you've got the ability to find out that information, I would start with the specification so you know you're covering the right stuff.
Yeah, now this would be my question. What specification options are there? Is it always computer science? Or could she do IT? And what would be the bonus of doing IT? And is there such a thing as ICT anymore? Or is that disappeared?
So IT, ICT is pretty much interchangeable. It's the same sort of thing. So and you mentioned the Java book. So the minute you mentioned Java and programming, I'm going to assume it's computer science because there's going to be no programming in ICT. Yeah. ICT, she's going to learn about business studies skills. She's going to learn how to use the probably, let's face it, it's going to be the Microsoft Suite Office. We're going to go Word, we're going to go PowerPoint. There's going to be some database work in there, which is incredibly difficult, but tons of fun. I have so much fun with databases, but that might just be me.
It might just be you, Holly. It's possible.
There's spreadsheets in there, which again is very technical, and then website design as well. So it's really practical.
So that's the ICT.
2 big practical exams, and then a theory one at the end.
So that's the ICT IGCSE. And what providers offer that? Edexcel, I'm guessing.
Edexcel, no. Edexcel
they don't do IGCSE.
And Cambridge.
Yeah.
And it's only those two. The Cambridge one appears to be less well supported now, which is a surprise, actually.
Do you mean fewer exam centres offer it, or do you mean not so many resources to help you through?
It is going to be actually a little bit of both. The ICT, because there is no GCSE option for ICT, a lot of the UK resources have essentially kind of dried up. ICT is not sat in state schools at all.
They've moved to computer science.
There was a big push to move to computer science, and then the ICT option has now become like a vocational option. So it's far more kind of coursework based.
So in this case, that Deborah's okay, because she's probably a bit in the kind of coding side. So she's looked at her options, and she's looked at IT, IGCSE, and she's thought, no, that looks a bit, not for me. So now she's thinking, okay, I'm going to do IGCSE computer science. So now what are her options?
So there are a number of providers that she could go to. Obviously, I'm one of them, but you don't have to. I would start with the exam board specification. So read through what it is that you need to go over. Start coding as early as possible. The earlier you start learning a coding language, and also double check in the specification which programming languages are allowed.
For computer science IGCSE, is it Cambridge and Edexcel that offer that?
For IGCSE, yeah, Cambridge and Edexcel.
Is it the same coding languages that they use? Okay, so it's not.
So the IGCSE with Edexcel is a practical exam. It's a lot more weighted towards the kind of high level techy kind of programming side of things. There's a lot of theory in there as well. I actually only teach the Cambridge version, mainly because I find it a lot. It's easier to spiral to A level. So there's more time with the Cambridge IGCSE to kind of look through the specification, to spend time programming without having to panic about that practical exam at the end. And again, same kind of issue, because it's a practical exam, very difficult to find that exam centre.
Edexcel IGCSE, that is a bit heavier from the sound of it, and it has a practical exam at the end of it.
It does, yeah.
And the Cambridge, how is that assessed?
That is 2 written paper exams. So you're going to have one on the theory, one on the programming, but it's programming theory. So you're being asked a number of questions where you are essentially problem solving. So if you are of that kind of mindset of, here is a problem for me to solve, and you quite like puzzles, that exam is probably one of the most enjoyable exams you can do, because it's really logical. And you can go through and go, actually, this is the right answer, but I could give like 4 other answers that will also be correct, as long as I'm logically right.
So the Cambridge IGCSE, they don't touch a computer for the exams?
They don't know, but they do
weird.
All the way through.
Yeah.
We have like coding challenges right from like week 1. They will need to be manually writing Python, which is a little strange, or whatever language they happen to be using. So we use Python because it's the one that the actual exam board used to write the course. So it's almost like a natural way of teaching coding. Same kind of thing for the A level is that OCR have actually developed the course around the Python programming language. And everything else where you can have C#, you can have PHP, you can have all sorts of other programming languages, but they've then translated it into that one.
So for the IGCSE, the Cambridge IGCSE, you implied there that you don't have to use Python, that you can use another programming language. So how would you sit one exam? How would you sit an exam and answer in a different programming language?
So it asks you what kind of programming languages that you're using. You have a choice that you could use. So if you wanted to use Visual Basic, they still accept that. And then what happens is that when you have examiners who are marking them, they see what programming language you have used as they scan the papers, and they send it out to the people who happen to be able to program in that language.
So the questions are generic enough that you could answer in. So it's things like, if you've got an issue, you want to produce this thing, what code would you write? And then you just write your own preferred code. Oh, okay. So Deborah, who maybe is interested in Java, I really am a bit of a dunce at this subject, so you have to bear with me. So Java's a language, right? Java's a programming language. So she wants to do that. So she would perhaps choose the Cambridge IGCSE because she wants to do Java. But would the EdXL IGCSE, would that also allow her to do that if she wanted to do Java?
So if you want to work out what programming language that you can use, my strongest recommendation is to look at the latest version of the specification. In the first sort of 5 pages, they will have a list of acceptable programming languages. So especially for EdXL, because it's going to be practical, they have to develop a practical set for each programming language. They will say you can use this, this, and this. Python tends to be in there, VB tends to be in there, C# is almost always in there. Java occasionally. Java is a decent programming language to start off with, but it's not very well supported by a lot of the examiners, which is really interesting because it used to be something that was just a natural thing to study in the degree.
It's just gone out of favour.
A lot of programming languages, they kind of come and go. It depends on which one happens to be like the most exciting one at the time. But the big thing to remember is that once you've learnt to program in one language, it's not like a spoken language where the syntax, the grammar and spelling of your language changes wildly between languages. Once you've learnt the logic of one language, to translate it into a second one and a third one, is actually a lot easier because the logic remains. It's just the words that have changed. So when I introduce myself to a lot of students, I will explain to them, I program in 7 different programming languages, which sounds really exciting and really, really clever. But actually what I did is I learned one really well and I've translated it into...
Which one did you learn first?
So I didn't actually program until I started my degree. Because I like a challenge. And so my first programming language was C++, which is a bit of a baptism by fire. And I think it's really helped with teaching and tutoring because I'm able to say to my students, my first term, I spent just crying into my keyboard and questioning every life choice I'd ever made because it was really hard. And all of these people around me had done either IT at A level because I'm terribly old, or they'd been programming for some time. And so when I walked into this classroom and I was like, C++, I'm sure I can do this. My lecturer at the time looked at me and went, you can't do that. You've never programmed before. And I took it as a challenge and was like, nope, absolutely not. So when they are finding it really difficult, I'm absolutely able to empathize with them because I remember the pain. Actually, my first, I want to say good programming language, I wasn't that good at C#, at C++, was C#. I moved on quite quickly to C#. I taught myself C# for my dissertation. And that's what I was professionally developing in my first programming role.
So theoretically, once you learn the bare bones of brackets and I'm really out of my depth with this one.
So there are 3 things you learn. Yeah, there are 3 things you learn, and they're called the constructs. Imagine you are a builder and you are constructing a house. So you've got sequence, which is the order which your code goes in. You've got selection, which is, do I run this code at all, based on true or false? And then you've got iteration. Iter is a Latin word for again. So iteration is to repeat something. So you've got sequence, selection, iteration, and you build those together in these building blocks, a bit like Scratch, building blocks to make your coding. So if you can code in Scratch, you can code in Python. And if you can code in Python, you can code in C#.
Yeah, I get you. And most children, they do Scratch early on, don't they, at primary and things like that?
Scratch is fantastic.
You can't do Scratch for GCSE, I'm guessing, though.
You can't use Scratch as your GCSE coding language. However, even at university level, you would use Scratch as a development tool to kind of give yourself a top-level idea of how something will work.
So like a kind of play it out. That's nice. That's nice. It's nice to know people are all these undergrads still doing a bit of Scratch. That's quite cute. So we've got Deborah. And Deborah is going to do the IGCSE Cambridge in computer science, and she's going to do Java just because she's old school. So she's decided that she wants to self-study because parents don't have a lot of money, they don't want to pay for a course. So would she buy a textbook?
Yeah, she can. She can also have a look on YouTube. There's some amazing stuff on YouTube. You can go in there. There's lots of people who've uploaded things. There's lots of stuff in the old specification because it changed for the summer of 2022. That was the first new exam. So actually, we've got no past papers at the minute, which is a little scary. But there's lots of stuff on there. There are free resources that people will put out. I would probably recommend parents have a look on TES because quite often teachers will share things. You're likely not going to get like the whole specification. Cambridge, again, on their website are going to say these are the books you should buy, and they will generally give you an idea of whether they're the new or the old spec. Edexcel will do exactly the same. They have a list of these are our resources. I think if you're self-studying, I would, as a parent, feel more comfortable having the book to refer to, and that's certainly what we did when we were running through the GCSEs. We had the textbooks, so we had at least something to refer to and feel a little bit more confident.
Okay, and is the Cambridge IGCSE, is that examined in most exam centres? Is that fairly accessible?
It is pretty accessible.
Okay, so Deborah's okay. So she's sat her IGCSE computer science, and we're going to come back to Deborah in a minute for A levels because she loves it. So she's going to go on to A levels. But her little brother, he's called Donny. That's a good name as well.
That's an excellent name.
I'm showing my age now though, because wasn't Donny in a band in the 1970s? I'm sure the Bay City Rollers had a Donny in it.
It was an Osmond, wasn't it?
Donny Osmond, yeah, maybe that's where it's coming from. Anyway, Donny. Now he doesn't really like studying and is not very self-motivated, but really likes gaming. But his parents really want him to have a GCSE in something that vaguely sort of like helps him sort of do that. But he wants to do like gaming, so he wants some sort of gaming course, but his parents want him to do a GCSE, but he wants a nice easy GCSE, doesn't want to do any coding. So what do we do about Donny? Donny's I don't know, he's 12.
Okay, so Donny's a little bit younger. I would recommend, in fact, I'm going to pick up one of my badges at this point, which obviously we're a podcast, so it's really difficult to see. But
it's almost impossible, in fact.
Absolutely. But this is one of the badges I'm posting out to one of my students today. This is an IDEA badge. So IDEA is online, it's completely free. It is essentially like the digital Duke of Edinburgh Award. And you can go through bronze, silver and gold. So bronze is like that sort of age, that entry level age group, and you can do all these badges. You pick up the points, so they could be IT. This is where your digital literacy comes in, and there's also lots on there about games design. You pick the badges you want to do, you earn the points, and they will send you a certificate to say that you've completed it. Silver is GCSE equivalent level, but it's not a GCSE. It's really important to remember that. This is because it's a I want to say it's a point and click course. That sounds really unpleasant. It's not. They're lovely. I love them. But you've then got gold, which they've only just released, and that's A-level standard. And there's loads of stuff on there about artificial intelligence. But the bronze award for Donny would be fantastic because that's going to give him an idea of what it is like to study games design before he sets himself up for like a whole 2-year course.
Okay, so that's called IDEA.
IDEA, IDEA.
And that's online. That's something
all
that you
online.
Would okay, so Donny's done that.
No tutoring, no live lessons for those.
Is it expensive, by the way?
It's free.
Okay, great. So Donny's parents are very happy now. So Donny's done that, and he's now 14, and he loves games design. His parents still want him to get a GCSE, but he still doesn't want to do any coding. and he wants someone who holds his hand through the whole thing. He's not going to self-study. So what are his options?
Okay, this is when you go to a provider. So you've done your idea course, you've done a little bit, you understand what the course is actually all about, and we know by this point that Donnie is not just sort of into games design, but actually quite into art as well. So part of the iMedia, which is the OCR National, is going to be, you're going to start off with graphic design. And in there, last term we designed a Pokemon. That was our practice task. Everybody had their graphics tablet, and we were learning about how to use artists' tools online. So we use Krita. Again, it's free. It means that everyone can download it. It's cross-platform. So everyone's like drawing their amazing Pokemons, learning about layers and shading, and I have a fantastic time with that because I get to take off my computer science hat and put on my artist hat. And then we take those concepts and move them into games design. So when you go into games design, you've got two different types of people. You've got the developers, the programmers, and then you've got the artists, who are then developing their characters. And this allows them to do both. So before they go into A-level and specialise, at this point, it's not even A-level, it's I would recommend the UEA route for this one. You can try
University of East Anglia?
It's a university, no, I don't remember. It's the Arts Council, basically,
Okay.
which is like a level 3. It's this is one of those 100% coursework wonderful things that you can do at college. Lots of art colleges run them. If you're doing fine arts, you're probably doing one of those courses. And the games design course is part of that now.
Okay, so let's go back to Donnie's OCR National. Now, the OCR National is basically OCR's version of EdXL's BTEC.
Yes. So you're going to do 2 units of coursework, which you have to do with your provider. These get set up. Now, you have to be able to authenticate that coursework. So I need to know my students are there. We've been running a few different things because I've got almost every student who comes to me doesn't like cameras. They don't want to be sharing their cameras with everybody. So we've worked out that actually the system that I use with my version of Zoom, I can put it on focus mode, which means that they can see my camera, I can see them. Nobody else gets to see each other, which makes them much more comfortable. A couple of them will switch their camera on, give me a wave, switch it off, and then give me another wave at the end, so I know it's still them. And again,
just in case their parents had snuck in to do the coursework.
I have to sign it to say, yes, this is definitely them. So, I need to...
the chance of a parent being better at anything to do with tech than their child is pretty much 0, isn't it? Apart from you, Holly.
It's definitely low. It's definitely low, but it's not completely 100% not going to happen. And it's something that I can then say to them, okay, well, for this lesson, I'm going to watch you create your character, or we're going to use a Google Doc and you're going to show me lots of screenshots of what you're doing. And then when we get into games design, we use a thing called Game Maker, which gives them the option of not coding, or rather coding in more sort of like a Scratch way, rather than having to manually type it in. It's still quite complicated, but they're handheld every step of the way. So we have 12 lessons of recorded things I can refer them back to and go, can you remember how to jump off a platform? If not, let's go back to lesson 4. Go and have a watch of that video. And then we have 12 weeks of coursework.
So Donnie's excited by his OCR National, and can he complete that in a year, or is that a 2-year course?
It has to be a 2-year course because of the sheer volume of coursework. Unfortunately, what happens is that one coursework unit leads on from the next. So the games design unit actually takes a lot of the concepts of the graphic design unit, which is where you're designing your characters, you're creating your concept sketches and things like that. And that assumed knowledge then gets pushed into games design.
And can he sit that at any time of year? Can he join the course at any time of year, or does it start September time?
September start, yeah.
We interrupt this broadcast to remind you to like and subscribe to our podcast. And don't forget to join our Home Education Matters Facebook group, where you can find details on all our podcasts, any links or resources mentioned, chat to our guests, request upcoming podcasts, and even come on the podcast yourself. Do join us over there. Okay, so Donnie is doing his OCR National, 2 years, he's very happy. Now, Deborah, she wants to do A-level. So what are her options then for doing A-level? Something to do with computers and coding, basically.
Okay, so if Deborah had gone the IT route, if that had been her thing and she really enjoyed IT, had maybe done the GCSE or maybe done a level 2 ICDL, she could have then moved on and done either the International A-level for ICT, and again, it's really, really rare, but it's there. So if you can find an exam centre, it's a very good A-level and fantastic for actually going out and working. It's got some really good practical skills there.
There are exam centres in the UK that offer it, but they're just maybe just not easy to find.
Yeah, hen's teeth. Or there is the level 3 ICDL, which is called the Advanced ICDL, and it's actually worth UCAS points. It is an A-level equivalent. Yep. I want to quote how many, but I can't remember.
How many?
In fact, I can.
I'm slightly obsessed by UCAS points, so tell me how many.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. Right, so our 24 UCAS points.
That does equate to an A-level, doesn't it? I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is an A-level.
So would you need to have done the level 2 to do the level 3? Okay, so you could just do a level 3 ICDL. Okay, but she doesn't want to do that. But that is very interesting.
And that's easier to sit because you can sit that with the provider of the ICDL and you can do your exams from home.
Is it 2 years, that one? Or is it however long?
However long you want to.
That's fascinating.
And it's really flexible as well. So
that's nice.
Your units.
Yeah, that's very nice if you wanted to get extra UCAS points, but maybe not sit an A-level, isn't it? Yeah, that's good to know. But Deborah, she's a coding girl. So what's she going to do?
Well, she has two options. A-level, there is basically two options. AQA don't accept private candidates for their A-level, which is a real shame because it's fantastic. And it's because they release a lot of like pre-release material, and it's very difficult. You have to keep it safe and secure, so that they have these
they don't trust
issues.
Us.
No. I'm so sad. It's such a good qualification. But the alternatives at the moment are CIE. Again, Cambridge have an international A-level. That's practical in year 2. So you have 4 exams for that one. You're going to have 2 for the AS, which are both papers, and then you have 2 for the A2, which is like the old system of A-levels.
So it's modular in that way. So it is
modular.
Yeah. Okay. So you sit 2 exams in the first year, 2 exams in the second year.
And then 2 exams in the second year. If you want to sit that in a year, you can, but you still have to sit 4 exams.
And that's the computer science international A-level with Cambridge.
Yeah. One thing to be aware of is that a lot of exam centres, again, they've removed that qualification because of the practical exam, because you have to have IT people on site. It's become quite a difficult one to sit. I know Fairgoes have been in contact with me recently to say they've removed that. They're now offering OCR. What can we help? So OCR is the other one.
Okay, so Fairgoes, so that is the home education sort of based exam centre down in Hampshire, right?
It is, yes.
Okay,
yes.
And so Deborah's parents, they're busy, they want it nice and easy, they don't want to be searching around for an exam centre. So what's the nice straightforward option?
The nice straightforward one is OCR. OCR is, I've taught this since 2009, since it was computing. I feel very old. So,
wise and experienced.
Absolutely, wise and experienced, wizened. OCR is a lovely course. It's been going for a really, really long time. The only issue that home ed people will find with this is that there is a coursework element. 20% of it is a practical piece of coursework with a huge write-up. Something that if there are any home ed parents listening who are considering A-level for computer science and you're thinking OCR, please get in contact with a provider in the first year rather than this this time, because it is 6 months of coursework and you need somebody to monitor you all the way through.
So they can't just come at the end and say, my daughter's done, 6 months worth, can you sign it off? No, you need to be signing off all the way through.
All the way through, and you can't do it in 8 weeks. It needs to be done over a set number of months, because you're actually doing a real life, almost like a simulation of working for a development company. You're going to design, develop, test, and then get some evaluation, go back again and do like this iterative development cycle. It's amazing. It's so much fun, and you get to choose what you want to do. So you can
choose the language as well. Really? So yes. Deborah's happy with her Java at this stage.
Deborah likes Java. Deborah can absolutely 100% do Java. Deborah wants to do Java for the A level, and then suddenly decides for her project, but actually she fancies learning some C# because she wants to use say Unity for a bit of games programming, because her brother's showing her the kind of
maybe they're going to collaborate, make their own game.
So she decides to use that. Her tutor is then going to need to monitor all the way through, and there are a couple of options that they can use for this. So they might be with a provider where that's included. So for mine, I run 10 workshops through what we call the year 2, because some do want to just do AS. And those workshops, you come in, you show me what you've been doing. I am then aware of who you are, and I get to know your code, because somebody's coding is a bit like their fingerprint or their handwriting. You recognize it. It's really, really unique to you. So if you've lifted something, or I don't know, of a certain AI, then we're going to notice. It's really obvious if we know you. Alternatively, you can go and work one-to-one with a tutor, and they will monitor you, but whoever it is needs to be linked with your exam centre. So
right,
they need
to get it signed off.
And because it's coursework marking and authentication, they need to be a qualified teacher.
Yeah. So for A-level, it sounds like you can do it, but you need external assistance to do it. You need a tutor or a course provider. But for GCSE, for the IGCSE, you can self-study, but then you just need to find the exam centre to sit, which didn't sound too problematic. Okay, so Deborah's sorted. She's got herself her A-level. She's happy. Donnie's happy. And then the third child comes along. Why not?
Excellent.
And this third child... what do they want to do? What are they going to be called? They'll be called Dylan. And Dylan, they quite like...
Perhaps Dylan likes just gaming. Not the development. Dylan just likes playing games.
Dylan just likes Minecraft. Dylan's always trying to sneak onto Fortnite. Dylan, turn your back and they're on a game. Gaming is everything for Dylan. How can Dylan's parents utilize Dylan's love of gaming to get some sort of qualification?
So Dylan's got a couple of things that they should be doing. First of all, they should absolutely be doing some kind of digital literacy. That they need e-safety, because a lot of these games are now online. They're going to be talking with people. They might be talking with people they don't know. So e-safety is parents' top priority, especially if the parents aren't particularly techy themselves. You want to make sure that you are learning about what's going on. If you want to go and find a provider who's offering e-safety, fantastic. If you want to just go and have a look, thinkyouKnow.co.uk. That's your first port of call, because that will give you all
Think You Know.
Yeah, Think You Know.
Think You Know.
Is wonderful. It's a really, really good resource for parents, and it will give you the up-to-date information about online gaming and how to keep people safe. However, if you want to get a qualification, that kind of thing, there are now e-games courses. There are esports courses for level 2, level 3. There are esports degrees now where you can go, and it's not just playing games. Anywhere you go, we're going to say to you, you're not here to play games, although esports will be. But for them, it's like event organisation. So what do you need in terms of technical areas for, like, if you're going to do an esports, or even if you're going to be a streamer, what kind of hardware, software do you need? Do you understand how to edit your sound? Do you understand how to do the marketing to get this kind of event? If you're going to be a streamer, you need income. So how are you going to generate your income? What are you going to do for your merchandise? That kind of thing. And so actually, it's like business studies, but with some gaming in it.
That's interesting, because Dylan wants to be a streamer. So what qualification could they get then that would be like, okay, this is going to support Dylan doing their streaming?
So they're quite niche, but there are definitely esports out there. So you would want to be searching for esport instead of computing, or instead of games design or development. They're all very different strands of the same kind of digital area.
So if Dylan wants to stream Minecraft, does that count as esports? I thought esports was just like driving cars in Sims and things.
So when we use the word e-sport, what it means is that you are competing against others. So if you are in a Minecraft stream with other people, and you happen to take up your sword and bash somebody with it, that's an e-sport. You are in combat. E-sport could be running a live stream where you are talking about your game. The word sport is a bit misleading, but it's kind of no other real word for it at the minute. It tends to be competitive gaming. And for those ones, the one thing obviously to be very aware of is a lot of these esports courses need to be age appropriate. So go and talk, if you are going with a provider, go and talk to them. Make sure that the games that they're going to be introducing are going to be age appropriate for your child, especially with home ed, where we don't really work on age groups, we just work on their ability. You might find, and this happens with things like film studies as well, you might actually find that you've got a child who's a little bit younger but incredibly academically gifted, who can actually go much higher, but now they're being exposed to things that maybe aren't of their maturity level.
Interestingly, in a very old school kind of way, I found that with my children's reading, because they both read very early and they had a very high reading age, that I found that I was then having to remove books that they could easily read, just because the content was too adult.
Yeah, they cover themes that aren't quite enough. I know for film studies there's one called Attack the Block, which it's not a horror, but it's a difficult one for younger ones to watch. And especially for things like gaming, that then becomes more of a conversation for parents, because if you're going to play Call of Duty, it's an 18 for a reason. I only need to listen to the language for 5 minutes and go, whoa, I don't think so. And it's not really to do with things like the language. If you look at the PEGI ratings, they will actually tell you, using some of the bits underneath, so that they have like these little logos, and it will tell you why it's an 18. So quite often there'll be drug references, or there will be they call it inappropriate violence, which is a weird thing to say.
As opposed to appropriate violence.
Appropriate violence. This one was absolutely justified. So the inappropriate violence is things like, it's just there. There's no like storyline building up to it, or it's not cartoon violence. So you'll quite often find cartoon violence in much younger games. So like Sevens, you'll have cartoon violence. But you can talk to your young people about that. Whereas, going around, say, Dune is a really good example, where you are just blowing up zombies, and you get extra points for 50 headshots.
I'm so lucky that neither of my two like those kind of games, because they just sound so horrible. But I suppose I think maybe in some ways teens, they work through stuff maybe by playing these games. They kind of work through things that they're, I don't know, I guess it's better they do it.
They're building
on a
teamwork.
screen.
They are they're able to sort of test out different scenarios. It's a bit like simulation of the real world. some of them clearly not a simulation of the real world, but there's problem solving and there's all sorts of things about gaming actually being incredibly good if it's age appropriate.
Yeah. Okay, so so from what I can gather, and correct me if I'm wrong, yeah, there seem to be three main routes. You can do the alternative provision route where you perhaps do gaming courses, and then the BTEC equivalent, the OCR National. So not GCSEs, but still courses
so
and
alternative, qualifications.
And then you've got the ICDL route, which you can go all the way through to sort of level 3, which is equivalent to A level and gets you UCAS points. And you can do level 1, level 2, level 3. And that's very practical based, will help you when you get to the workplace, that kind of thing. And then you've got the third option, which is the sort of what I call the standard option, which is IGCSE and international A level. And that's mainly Cambridge seems to be the one that's easiest to access.
So Cambridge definitely for IGCSE, and then for A level OCR.
That's right.
So we almost go international and then UK based. It will change as they change the specifications, which I'm sure they will do again soon.
They like doing that as much as possible.
Absolutely do.
Keep people on their toes. So we've sorted out Deborah, Donnie, and Dylan. I'm very happy with that. I reckon one of those three scenarios, our listeners will be like, yeah, okay, that's my child. Or maybe their child has no interest at all in computer studies. I mean, my children's father is a computer studies teacher, and neither of them have done anything.
They've rebelled.
I know, they've done nothing at all to do with laptops or any kind of tech use. So, okay, so Holly, where can our listeners find you? Because you provide the international A level, you also provide the IGCSE, and I'm guessing you do, I think you mentioned some of the other courses as well. So tell us a little bit what you provide and where our listeners can find you.
Okay, so I offer ICDL from level 1 all the way up to level 3, including the exams. I run a Key Stage 3 course. Actually, I run 2 Key Stage 3 courses. I do the IGCSE for Cambridge and the OCR for A level. And I also run the games design for OCR iMedia, which is the vocational games design course. So all of those are over at teachallaboutit.uk. There's also a teachallaboutit.school. So if you happen to be on a blue site, go and have a look for the yellow one. Because the yellow one is the tuition and the courses. Blue is for schools. I also run some free online help on Facebook. I have a Facebook group which is called Key Stage 3 IGCSE and A-Level Computer Science for Home Education. I know that is a huge mouthful.
You need an acronym.
I do. I need an acronym for the whole thing. But yeah, so that it's we're into the search terms at that point. But yeah,
tell us that Facebook group name again.
It is Key Stage 3 IGCSE and A-Level Computer Science for Home Education. So on there, parents can post their questions. We've got a couple of group experts. It's open to any parent who is self-studying, who is part of a group, who just wants a little bit of extra help, who needs any kind of questions answered. And quite often towards the exam, I'll be posting things like revision help, and the little YouTube help videos that as we roll up to the exams are always quite useful.
I think it's really nice to have a home educator providing courses for home educated children, because I think it has that kind of nuance. You sort of understand the really core values at the root of home education, this idea of sort of freedom and flexibility and a children taking responsibility for their own learning. So it's really nice that you're able to reflect that back in your provision.
Yeah, and I think having watched both of mine go through the IGCSE route has been really helpful. And both of mine are now Key Stage 5, and one is zooming towards adulthood. So having seen them go through that journey, I'm able to give maybe a little bit more support to parents to sort of say, look, I understand where you are right now, especially when you're brand new to it. It's all a bit overwhelming, and it's okay to take a breath. And also to not feel guilty for using the resources that work for you. So if a course doesn't work for you, that's fine. Nobody needs to judge you for that.
Exactly,
and if you're using providers for everything, again, no judgment here. It's we're all unique.
This is very much something I sort of repeatedly bang on about in the podcast, is that you do it the way that works for you and your family, and there's nobody who can tell you that you're doing it wrong. The LA may try to tell you you're doing it wrong, but they can't. And so, I mean, in actual fact, I just did a podcast which I think I'm probably going to name after a Taylor Swift song, called Call It What You Want, where we talk about all the different approaches to home education. And we came up with 26 of them. And it just goes to show that there's so many different routes you can take, and they're all just as valid, as long as it works for you and your child. So thank you so much, Holly. That was wonderful today. Thank you. And thank you for telling us all. Thank you for guiding Deborah, Donnie and Dylan through their educational process. And do come on our Facebook group. And so if there's any listeners who want to ask you any questions, Holly will be on our Facebook group, and you can come and see her links for her businesses, but also any other links that she's got that might be helpful for maybe TES resources or YouTube channels or anything like that. And Holly will be on our Facebook group, so you can come and ask her any questions. Thank you so much, Holly. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Home Education Matters podcast. See you at the next one. Have a lovely day.